Hello, welcome to the Hero Report podcast. My name is Ari Cohen. I'm a professor of political science at the University of Nebraska, and over there on the other end is Matt Langdon of the Hero Construction Company. Hi, Matt. How are you?
Hi Ari, I am well. It's very early for me to be doing a podcast, but for you, well into well into the day. 7:30 is for you.
Yes. Yeah, not early at all here, and also if I was there, I don't think it would be early. But yes, we have different understandings of what early means because we have children of different ages. Unlike heroism, I would say time and our understanding of what is early is relative.
Nice segue.
Yeah, thanks. So with heroism on the mind, Matt, I wanted to talk with you today as sort of the second part of this ongoing series about living heroically. I wanted to talk today. I think we talked last time, had a pretty good conversation about having heroes, picking heroes, and gave people some resources on places they could go online to find some heroes, to start doing some searching. Today, though, I thought we would talk about something. I don't know if it's more practical, but in some sense it feels more practical, or at least more hands-on than picking heroes. Certainly, I think an easier topic today to grapple with what we mean, but no less important than the previous topic, and that, of course, is what I've taken to calling doing small good things. I think one of the things that's become clear to me as I've started thinking about living a heroic life and the component parts that go into a heroic life, or that prepare someone to act heroically in a big way, is really the importance of acting on behalf of others in small ways. This seems like it should be really obvious, but I think it deserves some consideration. I think we should talk specifically about it. So I don't know, let me turn it over to you, having said all of that as like a preface.
Yeah, ideas be early on, and it came to me through reading the story of Saint Therese, who was a young nun, 120 years ago, I think. She started, and she wrote a diary at the urging of other nuns once she joined the convent, and she had a lot of, I guess, progressive thoughts and thoughts on how to live, and I guess more particularly how to get into heaven, because that was the big focus as a nun, rather than living the life. Consensus in those times, or in that faith, I guess, was that to get into heaven you had to do something amazing. That it was only open to people who did big, amazing things. And Therese disagreed with that, and she had this idea called her little way. And the little way was basically doing little good things every day, and that was just as likely to get you into heaven as doing one big, amazing thing. And I just saw the parallel with heroism there right away. I mean, I think when people do talk about heroes, there's often it kind of goes both ways, but there's often an idea that it's someone who's done some huge big thing, and people regularly will bring up Mother Teresa, or someone who's dedicated their life to doing good for others. But most of the heroes in the world are those people that have done sort of relatively less, definitely less famous things, and certainly shorter things, or smaller things. So I was really taken with that parallel, and I think that led me to thinking about what that means. And I think initially the thought was someone who's doing little good things for others is a hero, but subsequently have decided that that's not really the case. That's just someone who's doing good things. But as we've talked about on the show before, doing those little good things for other people certainly prepares you for the situation where you might be called to do something big for others. And big meaning, usually meaning there's a lot of little good things you can do on a daily basis that are not risky and are not really putting you out much at all. And that certainly prepares you. And I'll let you sort of build off that, because you've already mentioned the idea that it's practicing interacting with people outside of yourself.
Right. Yeah. You know, the thing for me, we should talk a little bit about this first, right? That, there is a suggestion that doing something on behalf of someone else, acting charitably or being of assistance, that these, that the kind of altruistic things we're talking about, right? Sort of, but small acts of altruism should count in some way as heroic. And I think the most important thing to say, at least I think, is that we have to recognize that these are good things to do. That pro-social behavior is what we're trying to encourage, but that we're not comfortable simply saying that anytime you help someone else, anytime you act on behalf of others, anytime you're nice to someone, or whatever it is, you put yourself out a little bit on behalf of another, that this is heroic, right? My feeling is that this doesn't denigrate the small good thing that you're doing, right? And calling it small and good is not meant to negate it or make someone feel less than or discourage someone from doing these things. Quite the contrary. I say small good things because I want to emphasize that they are good. I want to encourage people to do them by recognizing that they're not big, right? They don't require a massive investment. They're not dangerous. They're things that anybody could do at any time, right? And so I really want to emphasize this, that I really don't want anyone to hear this and to think to themselves, well, here are two guys who, if you're not doing something huge, if you're not impressive, you're not heroic, right? We simply want to suggest that these are building blocks of heroism, right? And that in and of themselves, even if you're never going to be heroic, right? If you never rise to the, the moment never presents itself, right? For you to jump in and do the risky, singularly impressive thing, saving a life, whatever. Having done these small good things as part of your daily life, that in itself is a good, right? And so I just want to set that out very clearly. But also what I want to suggest is that when I say this is a building block, right, when I say that this is a component, this helps people to get into a position to do the heroic thing if they're called upon, I think that's where we should now focus the conversation, right? Because the reason I think this, as you started to suggest, is that it gets you thinking about other people, right? It gets you to regularly be other-directed, right? To be responsive to the concerns of others as you're going through your daily kind of busy life. Yeah, I give an example when I talk to my students. We have my building where I teach is it's 12 stories, right? And there's a bank of 3 elevators, and they're very slow, and you could find yourself waiting for an elevator for a very long time. And the worst thing is when you come into the building and the elevator's there, but the door closes just as you get there, right? Because there's a lot of people coming and going in a 12-story building, and it could be several minutes while you stand there and wait for the next one, knowing that you've just missed it. And the worst feeling is looking at the people who are in the elevator and they don't press the button to open the door, right? They just stand there looking at you while the elevator closes right in your face, right? And they know you've just missed it. And so what I started doing, right? My students really, obviously, they identify with this. I think anybody who's had that happen, which is pretty much everybody, not simply in the building, but in the world has had this happen. And you know, that person, you know, they're not. They know how it would feel to be on your end, but they're not on your end, and so they don't make that move, right? They don't put their foot in the door or press the button or whatever to help you out. They're not. That would be a small good thing, right? It's very low cost. It's effectively no cost, right? It costs them an extra second while you get on, but it's a but think about how it would make you feel when someone holds the door for you. So what I've started doing is I carry candy in the pocket of my coat, right? It's winter here. It's very cold. I have a few pieces of candy, and anytime somebody holds the door, I just quietly give them a piece of candy. That's all. Because I want them to know that I noticed that they did a small good thing. Yeah?
That's
So you know, there's a kind of a practical example of the sort that I'm talking about. It's very low cost. I've got my coat right here on this chair. I just open the pocket. Candy. So there's an example.
Well, I think that's a great. Yeah, yeah, it's a great example, and it's you start to, as somebody who does look out for opportunities to help somebody, you wonder what's going on in the brain of that person or those people who are choosing not to help. And I mean, it's that it's that sort of every person for themselves attitude there, right? I think a lot of it is just, you know, bad luck to this guy. I'm in the elevator and I'm going up now, and if I stop, I have to wait another 12 seconds before the doors close. It's better me than him, and you know, that extends to things that are just not worth. You know, there's no advantage to being at the top of the building before somebody else. It's not like you're all rushing up to a job interview that the first one there is going to have the advantage. So this is why a lot of people hate big cities, isn't it? That people are just, you know, eyes forward, walking forward, and not paying attention to anything that's going on around them. And I think there was a story out of New York a couple of years ago, and I really wish I had saved the link for this because I've never been able to find it again. But a guy did one of the subway rescues where he jumped down onto the tracks and pulled somebody up. But he beforehand was doing what most commuters do and just had headphones on, listening to his music, staring at his feet. And so didn't notice anything going on around him until somebody bumped him who was trying to gawk down at the tracks to see what had happened. And so when he immediately jumped, and you know, that's the two things there. One is that all these other people were not doing that, but he only did it once he'd noticed. And if you're not looking around at your surroundings, you're not going to be helping. And I say this to kids. This probably is the same in college, but kids in middle school and high school who, between classes, they're just in a rush to get to their locker, then get to their next class. They're not looking at what's going on around them. And I think, you know, this is very to heroism. You have to actually notice the thing that needs help, or the person that needs help, before you can help. But many of us aren't. We're just not. Either we're not physically looking around, or we're not mentally connected with the people around us. We're lacking that empathy for people's suffering, I suppose.
Yeah, and look, I mean, that's probably going to be a separate one of these in this little web series here, right? Is this notion of expanding empathy. But there's no doubt in my mind that the first step in that is noticing, right? And that's what you're talking about. There's a, when you notice, then, then the next thing to do is to decide to actually take some action to help somebody, right? I mean, there are so many examples of these kind of small good things that you can do, right? Whenever we find ourselves in the same place with Phil Zimbardo, he almost, I think he always says, maybe almost always, but he talks about complimenting other people, right? Noticing other people and what they're up to, and complimenting them, right? Small, just sort of small compliments. And the kind of impact that can have on somebody's day. And I'll tell you, I mean, it is these sort of very small things, right? As a parent, I know if I remind my son about how good he is and what a good listener he is, um, he's bound to be a better listener for the next little while, right? Because I just, I say to him, wow, you're really being a good listener. I expect him to, right? Like, that's what he's supposed to. If I ask him to do something, he should listen. But this idea of paying attention, not just when he doesn't do the thing I ask him to do, but also when he does do the thing I ask him to do, and paying that compliment and saying, you really are a good listener. That was that thing you did was really helpful. Yeah, you're a great big brother, whatever the case might be, right? And you can kind of see, like, there's a boost to his self-esteem in that moment, and he's much more likely to be helpful going forward, because I pointed out that he's a helpful person. Yeah. I just think we can rattle off so many of these, but what they have at their heart is, first of all, they're so low cost, right? Like, not only does it not cost me to do the couple of things that I've given as examples, but, like, in a lot of those cases, I actually kind of feel good about it, right? Then somebody said, like, if I held the elevator, usually the person says thank you, right? And then I think, oh, you know what, that was good. Or when I compliment my son, I feel good about it, right? I'm glad to have paid him a compliment and to have him smile, or whatever it is. Yeah. These are the kinds of things that seem to me so low cost, but they really do have a big impact. They have a big impact on the person who's the recipient of the small good thing you're doing, and they also have a big impact on you. As the person who does the good thing, right? Not just in the immediate instance of having done it, but going forward, insofar as you're now someone who's more likely to be looking at other people, to be considering other people and how they're feeling and what they're up to, and so on.
Yeah, and I think the Phil's Zimbardo's suggestion about compliments is twofold, and you've hit them, I think, both. It's that you are making somebody feel good about themselves, and you're receiving that reward for the good thing. But it's also that getting outside of yourself and doing something that's not natural. And I think he goes to great lengths to point out that complimenting is not a common thing, and people will probably look at you with okay, to do now that I've been paid a compliment, and it's one of those. It's a building block, a stepping stone to doing more. But I think what you touched on there too at the end, with another good segue, is that you start feeling good about this, and it can turn into a habit. And I'm going to show this book that I've been reading, The Power of Habit. By Charles Duhigg. The thing that struck me on this was how he talked about how habits are created, and we do something, we get a reward, and what happens as you start doing these to do something, and then you get the reward. And I think what happens is that the reward starts coming before you have actually performed the deed. So he tested. There was an experiment there where they were testing monkeys and giving them a pleasurable reward for pressing a button, I think. But in the brain, the patterns of reward were appearing after some time, were appearing before the button was pressed. So the anticipation is there, and I think that's what we're looking at here. Is if you keep doing good things for other people, when you see the opportunity, you're going to get the reward to do the action before you've even done the action. And I think that's where it starts becoming automatic. One of the examples they use is how marketers have used the power of habit to sell us things we don't need. And toothpaste was one of those. The toothpaste was not a big thing until a marketer got hold of it and linked the activity of brushing your teeth. And there's no connection between having healthy teeth and the fuzzy feeling, but they've connected that in our heads so that when we feel the fuzziness on our teeth, we automatically go and brush our teeth. So the brain is clearly there for us to use and abuse, and I think if we're going to be, we're trying to get people to ultimately act heroically, that's what we need to be doing, is creating those habits. And these little good things that are giving us reward for feeling good about it at the end, or being thanked, or whatever it is, holding open an elevator and getting some candy. If that happens often enough to somebody, they're going to start opening doors before they even think about the candy.
Right. Yeah. I think that's right, and I think it's something that you can start doing really easily in your daily life too, right? I mean, anytime you find yourself in the vicinity of somebody else, all you have to do is pay attention to that person. I mean, one of the things that we, that I think is increasingly important to talk about, and you mentioned it at the beginning when you talked about the subway example, is how disconnected we've become. Right? Increasingly, people are more and more disconnected because the technology that we carry around in our pockets has the capacity to be absolutely all-consuming. And I love technology. I love my smartphone, but it's very obvious that if I'm staring at my phone, I'm not paying attention to other people. If I'm walking around campus or a city or whatever, and I've got my earbuds in, I'm paying attention to music or a podcast or whatever, and I'm not paying attention to people on the streets, for example, right? There are all kinds of ways that we can start to really break down the distance between people. The first seems to me, and this is something I'm trying really hard to do. It's very, very hard. It's very hard for me, but I try to keep my phone in my pocket. This is this idea about sort of being present, right? You're not going to do something for somebody else if you're on your phone, right? If you're playing whatever game, whatever the new game is that people are playing, right? If you're playing that game on your phone, or you're listening to some music, or you're sending a text, or whatever, you're consumed with what's on the device, and what's going on around you is really secondary or even tertiary, right? As there are people who are listening to music while composing a text. Sometimes you have to, right? You have to be on your phone. You have the device for a reason. It helps you. It's technology is helpful, but I always see people, they pull out their phone for no reason, right? They're not about to do something. They just pull out their phone to look at it, and then they put it away again. I'm trying to master my desire to do that, right? To not take out my phone and instead to pay attention to what's going on around me, to be present and to see what, to actively look for ways that I could improve the situation of people around me. And I suggest that that's, in some sense, that's the far goal, right? if you've started making a habit of doing these small good things, eventually you'll get to a point, I hope, right, where you will actively be looking for ways to improve the situation of other people. Um, and again, these are not big things, right? I'm not suggesting that you should go out like and race into the streets, in service of trying to be heroic. But what I'm suggesting is there are innumerable ways in which people's lives, people's days can be brightened. People could be assisted, and you'll never know if you're not sort of thinking about the situation of the other.
Yeah, I think the pulling the phone out is that habit thing that we were just talking about. People are anticipating the new notification on Facebook, or before the phone has come out of the pocket, they've already got the little buzz in their brain about what they're going to see. Well, and I have an example that I've shared on the show before about helping this elderly couple onto the right subway train in San Francisco. Certainly, I wouldn't have been able to do that if I had been listening to music. And it is that presence of mind and just hearing and seeing what's going on around you. What's interesting to me is, we on the last episode we said we're really trying to make this something that is rewarding as a lifestyle rather than as a goal. And so we can say to people, you're definitely going to be more prepared to do a heroic thing if you are not listening to your headphones or playing on your phone. But that is that distant goal again. So this is a thing that might happen or might not happen. So why would I stop listening to music in my boring commute on the chance that something might happen? So I think we need to challenge ourselves and maybe our listeners to come up with answers on why more people to you now. And I don't think we have to look very far. I think there's a lot of study on mindfulness and being present. So rather than spreading your attention across walking through the park and listening to music and checking Facebook all at the same time is not good for your brain, or maybe that's not the case, that it's not good for it, but rather it is better for your brain to be focusing on a single task or a single or your presence in your environment. And studies out there that show that mindfulness is valuable to the brain physically. Yeah.
But there's also, even smaller, more immediate reasons for this, right? Because habit is, when habits are formed, they can kind of creep into other areas of your life that you're not thinking about. Yeah. So look, I'm going to listen to a podcast while I'm walking from my car into work. Yeah. But maybe I'll just have one earbud in and I'll have the other one out. Yeah. But I'm going to take them out and I'm going to stop listening when I get to the building, right? Because that's where I'm definitely going to run into other people. Yeah. And I want them to feel like I'm paying attention to them. And if I have one earbud in, they won't know if I'm listening to them or if I'm listening to something else. Yeah. But the thing that I noticed, right, is this. As I became one of those people who took my phone out all the time, when I was going for a walk, or when I was sitting, doing work, whatever. I wanted to be notified, right, of whatever was going on. It took me a while to notice this, but eventually it bled into other areas of my life where I didn't want to be taking my phone out, but where I was doing it, right? Where I wanted to be present, I wanted to be mindful of what was going on around me, and so on, right? So, you know that it's time for a change when you're reading a story to your kids and you have your phone in your hand, right? There's no reason to take the phone out of your pocket when you're sitting with your little kids and you're reading them a story. Right? It's very simple. Whatever, you know. So this is one of those things where leaving the phone in your pocket, getting into a different habit, right? Instead of the habit of always taking it out and seeing, but instead leaving it and getting around to it later when you're by yourself, when nothing's going on, has an immediate impact, right? There's an immediate good because your kids recognize that they're more important than your phone, right? And I can't imagine a better immediate good than that.
Yeah. Well, same thing at the right. It's very easy to be checking your phone while you're eating rather than being present with the people around the table.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think certainly as we explore this more, we might want to get into some reading on mindfulness, and maybe we have some readers who can share that with us.
Yes. If you're out there, if you're listening, if you're watching, let us know. What kinds of stuff should we read so that we can pass on all of this good information to others? Send us your articles, your books, whatever you have.
I bet Brian has got something for him. He can send us some papers on mindfulness.
Right.
So that's part 2. I think hopefully people have got some lists of heroes since episode 1, and now they can start fixing is a bad word. They can start altering their life to be more present, be more aware of what's going on around them, and trying to find opportunities to do little good things.
Yeah. I mean, I would challenge people, right? Like I do with the elevator example, right? Pick something small and see how you can help, right? See what that small good thing can do, whether it's holding an elevator, holding a door. Look, here's a really small good thing. When I go grocery shopping and I've got more than one child with me and a grocery cart full of groceries, and I put the children in the car and I unload the shopping cart into my, the groceries are now in my trunk, but I have the cart, right? So do I leave my kids in the car while I go find one of those cart return things? What do I do? A small good thing would be someone who walks by and says, "I'll take your cart for you." Right? I mean, it's tiny. It's tiny. It's no effort. But you know what? It makes my day.
The other place where I think there's opportunities for people to be more aware of what's going on around them and to do little good things is when you're driving. I think every time I shift from driving in America to driving in Australia, the change in good little things that get done on the road is immense. People in Australia are just they look for opportunities to squeeze your car in front of them if you're merging, or there's just it's amazing how much more looking around there is, and I think I've written about this
off the road. Yeah.
What's that?
Here, people will run you off the road rather than let you merge into the lane. It's incredible, right? What it means.
Still in glass bubble.
Wave somebody in.
Right. Yeah, I think there's a bubble around people's empathy when they get into the car. They feel immune to the society's pressures to have empathy. Yes.
I find myself saying this in the car with my family all the time, right? I'll point to someone who sped around me or who wouldn't let me merge, and I say to my son or my wife, right? I say that person's going to get to the stoplight one car ahead of us, right? They're going to be really excited because they're going to be one car ahead of us. I don't get it, but that's exactly as you say, right? There's a bubble there, and for whatever reason, people think it's very important to be one car ahead rather than to make it easier for somebody else.
Yeah, it's the same people that are getting in the elevator and not keeping the door open for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
So those are some things you can do, practical things, and they're easy, right? No one's going to applaud you, right? Someone will say thank you, most likely, but it's not. You're not going to get your name in the newspaper, and no one should think that this is heroic. But what we're suggesting is it has immediate benefits nonetheless for you, for people around you, and down the road, should you be called upon to do something big, you will be much more likely to do that big good thing if you've been in the habit of doing small good things. This is the kind of training that we're talking about, right? You know, we've said, I'm sure we've said it here in these episodes, it bears repeating. It's not my position that people are not heroic because they're villains, but because they're out of practice, right? You have to practice this stuff. And so here are some things you can do. Yeah, this is number 2.
That is correct. So we will be back whenever we're back next week, hopefully, to get on to number 3.
Absolutely. Same bat time, same bat channel. Thank you, Matt. Thanks to everyone for listening and watching. And really do send us some small good things that you do. I'm curious, right? Yeah, celebrate yourself, right? Tell us what are the good things that you've been doing. What are the good things that you're going to try to do? I'd be really curious. I'd love for us to put together a list of what people are doing.
All good things you've seen other people do.
That's right. Yeah, good things you've seen other people do would be great also. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Matt. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you back here next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.